ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು ಇದು ಯಾರು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಮಂಜುನಾಥ್ ಅವರು ಹೈಯರ್ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾಗ ಆ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಜಿ.ಎನ್. ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಅವರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ತುಮಕೂರು ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಫೇಮಸ್. ತುಮಕೂರು ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ನಾಟ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ತುಮಕೂರು ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಆಲ್ ಓವರ್ ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಫ್ಯಾಕಲ್ಟಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಅವರನ್ನ ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಒಬ್ಬ ಭೀಷ್ಮ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕರಿತಾ ಇದ್ವಿ. ಇತಿಹಾಸಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂತೆ ಅವ್ರು ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ರೆಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟೆಡ್ ಇವತ್ತು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್. ಅವತ್ತು ಏನ್ ಹೋರಾಟ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಇವಾಗಲೂ ಇವತ್ತು ಸಹ ನನಗೆ ನೆನಪಿದೆ. ಸೊ ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಈ ಒಂದು ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಸೆಮಿನಾರ್ಗೆ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಸರ್. ಅದ್ರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಯೋಗೇಶ್ವರಪ್ಪ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲರು, ಅವರನ್ನು ಸಹ ಸ್ವಾಗತಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಇದಷ್ಟೇ ಒಂದು ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಸೆಮಿನಾರ್ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಶೀಘ್ರವಾಗಿ ನಮಗೆ ಟೈಮ್ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಪ್ರಿಪರೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ. ಸೊ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಅನಿವಾರ್ಯ ಸಂದಿಗ್ಧತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆದಷ್ಟು ಸೆಮಿನಾರ್ ಅನ್ನು ಪ್ರಿಪರೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಸೆಮಿನಾರ್ ಅನ್ನು ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇವೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ಒಂದು ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಸೆಮಿನಾರ್ ಗೆ ಬಂದಿರತಕ್ಕಂತಹ ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ನನ್ನ ಫ್ಯಾಕಲ್ಟಿಯ ಒಂದು ಅಥವಾ ಸೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಜೊತೆಗೆ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿ ಮಿತ್ರರು ಮತ್ತೆ ಸ್ಕಾಲರ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ನೆರೆದಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ನಿಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಸಹ ಸ್ವಾಗತ.
Thank you, Professor Raju. Now I would like to take a moment to welcome our also. So I will request our research scholars to welcome him on the behalf of the Department of Studies. Now with the welcome address, we will move to the next part of the conference inaugural session. I would like to invite Professor U.S. Murthy sir, who is the chair and the convener of this national conference, to introduce the theme of national conference to the gathering and the students.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಶುಭ ಮುಂಜಾನೆ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ದಿವಸ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಪ್ರೀತಿ ಪಾತ್ರರಾದ ಮತ್ತೆ ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳು ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸುಮಾರು ಒಂದೂವರೆ ತಿಂಗಳ ಹಿಂದ್ಗಡೆ ನಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಪತ್ರ ಹೊರಡಿಸಿದ್ರು. ಏನಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಡಿಸೆಂಬರ್ ಒಳಗಡೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗ ಒಂದು ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ವಿಚಾರಣಾ ಸಂಕಿರಣವನ್ನು ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಮುಗಿಸ್ಲೇಬೇಕಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡು. ಸೊ ಅವತ್ತಿನಿಂದ ನಾವು ತಕ್ಷಣ ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತರಾಗಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಈ ದಿವಸ ಏನು ಸೇರಿದ್ದೇವೆ ಅದು ಅವರ ಪ್ರೋತ್ಸಾಹ ಮತ್ತೆ ಒಂದು ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರೀತಿಯಿಂದ ಹೀಗಾಗಿ ಇವತ್ತು ನಾನು ಸಾಕಾಗಬಹುದು ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ನನಗೆ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಕುಲಸಚಿವರಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಉಳಿದ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ತುಮಕೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಸಿಬ್ಬಂದಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಆಯೋಜಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ನನಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಂತಹ ಸಹಕಾರನ ಇವತ್ತು ನೆನೆಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು ನಾನು ಐ ಆಮ್ ವೆರಿ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಫುಲ್. ಈ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ವಿಚಾರ ಸಂಕಿರಣದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ನಾನು ಈ ವಿಷಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾರತ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂತಹ ನೆಲೆಗಳು ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಪುರಾತನವಾದ ಇತಿಹಾಸವನ್ನು ಹೊಂದಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ನಂತರ ಇಡೀ ಜಗತ್ತಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಷ್ಟು ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಸೆಟಲ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಪುರಾತನ ಕಾಲದಿಂದ ಏನು ಅವಿಚ್ಛಿನ್ನವಾಗಿ ಜನ ಏನು ನೆಲೆಸ್ತಾ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಒಂದೇ ನೆಲೆ, ವಾಸದ ನೆಲೆ ಅಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಕಾಣಬಾರದಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಾಂಬೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಕಾಶಿ ವಿಚಾರ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು, ಉಜ್ಜಯಿನಿ, ಯು ಟೇಕ್ ಎನಿ ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಕಲ್ ಸೈಟ್ ಅದು ಸುಮಾರು ಕನಿಷ್ಠ ಶಕ ಪೂರ್ವ ನಮಗೆ 9ನೇ ಶತಮಾನ ಹಿಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅವಿರತವಾಗಿ ಈ ನಗರಗಳು ಈ ಮನೆಗಳು ಜನರಿಂದ ವಾಸಿಸಲ್ಪಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಇದು ಒಂದು ತುಂಬಾ ಒಂದು ಸಂಕೀರ್ಣವಾದ ಒಂದು ಸಂಗತಿ. ಯಾಕೆ ಹಿಂಗಾಯ್ತು ಅನ್ನೋದು. ಸೊ ಇದ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾರತದ ಭೌಗೋಳಿಕ ಪರಿಸರಗಳಿವೆ. ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಸುಮಾರು ನಾವು 7 ಜಿಯೋಗ್ರಾಫಿಕಲ್ ಝೋನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನು ನೋಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಇದು ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಜಿಯೋಲಜಿಸ್ಟು, ಜಿಯೋಗ್ರಾಫರ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಇತಿಹಾಸಕಾರರಿಂದ. ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಪರಿಸರಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಒಂದು ರಿಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಏನಿಸ್ತೇವೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸಿಕೊಂಡು ನಮ್ಮ ಪೂರ್ವಜರು ಹೇಗೆ ಕೆಲವು ನಿರ್ಧಾರಗಳನ್ನ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರು ಅನ್ನೋದು ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಬರ್ತದೆ. ನೆಲೆ ನಿಲ್ಲಿಕೆ. ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೆಲೆ ನಿಲ್ಲುವಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಆ ತರದ ಒಂದು ಪೂರಕವಾದ ಪರಿಸರ ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ಪರಿಸರ ಇಲ್ಲ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಮನುಷ್ಯರಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ನೆಲೆ ನಿಲ್ಲಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯವಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಈ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ವಿಚಾರ ಸಂಕಿರಣ ಇದೆ, ಸೆಟಲ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ, ನೆಲೆಗಳ ಮಾನವ ನೆಲೆಗಳ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಇದೆ, ಅದು ಪುರಾತತ್ವ ಆಯಾಮದಿಂದ ಹೇಗೆ ನೋಡಬಹುದು ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಯನ್ನು ಎತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಈ ವಿಚಾರ ಸಂಘಟನೆಯನ್ನು ನಾವು ಹಮ್ಮಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ಬಂದಿರುವಂತ ರಿಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಪರ್ಸನ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಅನುಭವಗಳು, ಕಳೆದ ಸುಮಾರು 40 ವರ್ಷವಾಗಿ ಭಾರತದ ವಿಭಿನ್ನ ನೆಲೆಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದು ಆದಿ ಹಳೆ ಶಿಲಾ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಸೂಕ್ಷ್ಮ ಹಳೆ ಶಿಲಾ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ನವಶಿಲಾ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಕಬ್ಬಿಣ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭಿಕ ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಕಾಲ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಮಧ್ಯಯುಗ, ನಮ್ಮ ಕೊಲೋನಿಯಲ್ ಪೀರಿಯಡ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ಸೊ ಇವತ್ತು ನಾನು ನಮ್ಮ ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೆ, ಸ್ಪೆಷಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ PhD ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸುವರ್ಣಾವಕಾಶ ಅಂತ ಭಾವಿಸ್ಕೋತೇನೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ವೈಡ್ ರೇಂಜ್ ಇರುವಂತ ಒಂದು ಸಮೂಹ ಏನಿದೆ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ಸಮೂಹ ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಬಂದಿರೋದು ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಕಡಿಮೆ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ವಿಚಾರಣೆ ಸಂಖ್ಯೆಯಲ್ಲಿ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗಿರೋ ವಿಷಯ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ನೆಲೆಗಳು ಹೇಗೆ ಉಗಮಗೊಂಡು ಅದ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಅದರ ವಿಕಾಸವನ್ನ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ತಿಳ್ಕೋಬಹುದು, ಅದ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ನೆಲೆಯ ಆಗು ಹೋಗುಗಳಿದ್ದಾವೆ. ಅದನ್ನ ಎಷ್ಟರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕೆ ಪುರಾತನ ನೆಲೆಗಳಿಂದ ಅಥವಾ ಆಯಾಮದಿಂದ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದೆ. ಅದನ್ನ ನೀವು ಮೊದಲೇ ವ್ಯಾಖ್ಯಾನ ಹಿಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕೆಲವು ಪೀಳಿಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಆದಿ ಹಳಸಲಾಗೋದ್ರಿಂದ. ಸೊ ಹಂತವಾಗಿ ಹೇಗೆ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ನೆಲೆಗಳನ್ನ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕವಾಗಿ ಗಟ್ಟಿ ಹಿಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬನ್ನುವ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಅದನ್ನ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಬರ್ತೀರಾ, ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕವಾಗಿ, ಆರ್ಥಿಕವಾಗಿ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಇಡೀ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದ ಮತ್ತೆ ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಗೆ ಭದ್ರ ಬುನಾದಿಯನ್ನು ಹಾಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು, ಈ ಎಲ್ಲ ನೆಲೆಗಳು ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಪಾತ್ರ ವಹಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದನ್ನ ಇಡೀ ದಿವಸದ ಈ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ವಿಚಾರ ಸಂಕಿರಣದಲ್ಲಿ ತಾವು ಮನಗಂಡು ಈ ವಿಚಾರ ಸಂಕಿರಣದ ಪೂರ್ಣ ಪ್ರಯೋಗನ ಉಪಯೋಗವನ್ನ ಪಡೆದುಕೊಂಡು ಮುಂದಿನ ತಮ್ಮ ಅಧ್ಯಯನಗಳಿಗೆ ಇದನ್ನ ಒಂದು ದಾರಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂತ ನಾನು ಕೇಳ್ಕೊತೇನೆ. ಎಸ್ಪೆಷಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು PhD ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ನಂತರ ಈಗ ಸ್ನಾತಕೋತ್ತರ ಸೆಮಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಥರ್ಡ್ ಸೆಮಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಸಂಶೋಧನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆಸಕ್ತಿ ಹೊಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ವಿಷಯ ಅದು. ಇದ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಹೊರಗಡೆಯಿಂದ ಬಂದಿರುವಂತ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಂಶೋಧಕ ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅವರು ಸಹಿತ ಇದ್ರ ಉಪಯೋಗ ಪಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಈ ವಿಚಾರ ಸಂಕಿರಣದ ಏನು ನಾವು ಹಮ್ಮಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇವೆ ಇದನ್ನ ಉಳಿದವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಹಂಚಿಕೊಂಡು ಒಂದು ಯಶಸ್ವಿಯಾಗಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡು, ಮತ್ತೆ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯಕ್ಕೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ನಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಮುಂದಿನ ದಿನ ಕೊಟ್ಟಂತ ಭಾವಿಸಿ ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿ ಮಾತನ್ನು
Thank you, Professor Murthy. Now we would like to inaugurate National Conference. I will request Professor Jamna Madam from Bangalore University to kindly initiate the lighting of the lamp, and other dignitaries are also invited to join her. Thank you, sir. Now I would like to request to invite Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Jaishira, sir, to kindly come on the podium and give his presidential remarks to the students and the delegates.
Respected leaders of the dais and of the dais, delegates and students' friends. I am happy to inaugurate and preside over this one-day national conference on settlement systems in India, archaeological perspectives, being organized by the Department of Studies and Research in History and Archaeology. Indeed, I deem it an honor to share this intellectual platform with a galaxy of great historians. I take this opportunity to congratulate Professor U.S. Murthy and his colleagues for inviting such multifaceted personalities to our university. The honorable speakers have come from to deliver special lecture on various issues pertaining to archaeology and history. This conference will help our students and teachers to enhance their knowledge and competence. I urge and teachers to take part in this program actively so that we can enrich your knowledge in the field of history and archaeology. With these few words, I will stop my speech. I wish all the very best for this one-day national conference. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Jayashila, sir. Now, the end of the inaugural session, which is very short because of the long program we have the whole day. So I will be doing the vote of thanks for the inaugural session. I would like to thank Professor Jayashila, sir, who came on a Sunday to spend time with us in the early morning. I also thank all of our students, dignitaries, delegates who have joined us for this whole day program. And I also thank the support staff of the university who have again come on a Sunday to help us. Thank you. And now we'll take a few minutes break to arrange the dais for the presentation. We'll be starting the next presentation with Professor Ravi Kureshika's address. So just give us 2 minutes. We'll be preparing the stage for the next program. Thank you. I also thank Professor Jayashila, sir, for joining us. Thank you, sir. I request 2 students to please come on the stage and arrange for the next presentations.
इसको प्रोजेक्टर का कनेक्शन कहाँ से होता है? और ये इधर ये है वाईफाई है इंटरनेट का केबल है कि वाईफाई? देखिए नहीं अभी बाद में
Sir, ready? Sir, ready, sir? Sir, on the 5 ನಿಮಿಷ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ ಕಾನ್ಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ ಮೇಲೆ ಸೆಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಯಾವ ನನ್ನ ಪಿಸಿ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಯಾವ್ದು ಬೇಕು ಸರ್? ನಂತರದರೆ ವಿನುತ 1@23 ವಿನುತ VINUTH
What is this? Adi tere haki.
1@23 at sir. Sir. Okay.
Like this you want to put?
No, right. Any problem?
No problem. Get me up here.
They like I hope.
Put a light up on.
Like
Up on.
ma'am, like
DP up on.
ma'am, DP. DP apa? Sir, the session has started, sir. Live also is going. Okay. We'll put it on the website. And it will be stored in YouTube only, in our site.
Okay.
So whenever if you require, I can give back.
Right.
He did, sir. I know in the session, Charlie, MSW go working range.
Jamna, what is the specific of this session? Should I ask for the How much more time you need to start?
No.
Sir. Capital 1@2. Sir, 2 minutes. Okay.
So you need color mic or something?
1@23.
Color mic.
At 1@7. 1@23. What's that? Can you just check it once more? Sliding. Oh, sliding. Yeah, best pointer. Yeah.
Just point rest.
No, it's okay. I hope.
Run ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ
Yeah.
It's not working. No. Murthy sir, I will start. Welcome again to the first session of today's national. Our first speaker of the day is Professor Ravi Shettar sir. So I would like to invite him to kindly come on the dais for his presentation. Meanwhile, I would like to introduce the scholar to the gathering. Professor Ravi Shettar sir is a UGC Emeritus Fellow and Dr. V.S. and also Professor and retired Chairman of Department of History and Archaeology, Karnataka University, Dharwad. His area of specialization is archaeology, art, architecture, museum and heritage. Many research papers with high impact journals such as Science, PNS and others. He has got his many books published including Rootfaced and Elsewhere. His H index is 21, highest among social scientists in India. He has been rated with the editorial responsibilities of Man and Environment, Journal of Karnataka University Social Sciences and Current Sciences. He has been a recipient of fellowships of national and international repute such as Charles Wallace Fulbright Scholar, South Asia Leader of Inquiry Project at Human Migration, UGC Visiting Professor. He has been associated with NAC. He has been a UGC members for archaeology and history for a very long period. He has guided more than 12 PhD students. He has handled more than 15 research projects. He has published more than his publications have been national and international level journals, more than 100. So we are very much honored with his presence among us today, and I hope his talk will be a very much enlightening information for our students as well as the scholars. Thank you, sir, and welcome.
Morning, everybody. The topic assigned to me relates to the earliest settlements in the Indian subcontinent. To be able to put it in a proper perspective so that we understand where they are. And this particular concept of understanding why the settlements are there where they are has come into archaeology from geography. Basically, geographical methods and analysis of landforms in terms of understanding the formation of habitats have been applied in understanding archaeological settlement patterns. A major area of concern among archaeologists from the 1960s onwards, and in the Indian subcontinent, we began to focus our attention on this particular aspect from 1980s. Most of us, when we look or search for ancient settlements or archaeological sites, we generally follow river water courses because we think that water bodies necessarily controlled the location of a human settlement. So focus has been surveying the river valleys and documenting the presence of archaeological sites ranging in time from the earliest to the most recent. Settlement pattern studies do not have they cover all kinds of settlements, all categories of settlements. So that is one reason why this concept or this particular conference organized in order to look at the wide variety of settlements that we have across the Indian subcontinent, more so in the modern Indian geographical area, and look at various phases of development of settlements belonging to various time periods, archaeological time periods that we have in terms of Mesolithic, Neolithic, Iron Age, early historic and later historic periods and so on. So in this context, going to my own area of research activities during the last 20-25 years, Dr. Murthy requested me that if I can focus my lecture on the earliest settlements in the Indian subcontinent in the geological and geomorphic perspectives. So when we use two terms, don't be afraid that I'm going to talk geology or geomorphology, because these are all essential disciplines which have contributed to understanding archaeological settlements in terms of their development through time, which they have been preserved by the various natural processes which have been operating, on a large scale, landscapes and so on and so on. So that is one reason why we have to have clear idea of various factors which govern the formation of an archaeological site or the selection of a particular locus on the landscape for establishing a settlement. Now, in archaeology, we have so many definitions of what is archaeology and so on. But in this particular context, I will have to remember what Mortimer Wheeler wrote in 1908, that what is archaeology for us is synthesis of sciences. We are not able to synthesize information from various, interactive sciences which have helped us understand or reconstruct the development of life phase of past human societies. We will not be in a position to claim that we have reconstructed holistically our past. So that is why he emphasized on the fact that archaeology is synthesis of sciences. So in this particular context, I thought I'll touch upon two or three help us understand the settlements themselves. So that is why this particular title, the Paleolithic Settlement of the Indian Subcontinent, Geological and Geomorphic Perspectives. So in this case as well, when we say Paleolithic settlement, what do we mean by Paleolithic in terms of antiquity, or exactly how old are the settlements in the Indian subcontinent? is a very relativistic term, which gives us an idea that we have settlements, earliest settlements going back to the old Stone Age. But how far back in time is the biggest question that we Indian archaeologists face for a very, very long time. We have been very happy about the antiquity of the settlements in terms of numerical data. We call absolute ages. So in the last 3 or 4 decades, what has happened? Several sites have been discovered across the Indian subcontinent, ranging from the sub-Himalayas in the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent, which is known as Potwar Plateau, which is presently part of Pakistan. And that Potwar Plateau is sub-Himalaya, which extends all along the southern stretches of the Himalayas. But here, in this particular area, in the region called Poppy Hills, the British archaeological mission to Pakistan discovered a couple of sites which 2 million years ago, and they're about 20 lakh years ago. And that was an isolated date that we had for the earliest evidence of human settlement in this subcontinent. The same region had produced large number of sites for the last 70, 80 years. Several sites were, hundreds of sites have been reported from that part of the subcontinent, but we didn't know how old are they. Position in respect of the geological context. In the river sections, usually presenting as this sequence of gravel, gravel, silt cycles and so on, and they were assigned position with one of those gravels, gravel 1, gravel 2, gravel 3, like that. But that was not going to give us any clear picture of when exactly these came into existence. At the same time, we should also look at these settlements from the perspective of origins of humans and origins of culture in the African continent. So we are looking at the expansion of our early ancestors from out of Africa. Several phases of early humans out of Africa have been identified, and the earliest expansion out of Africa was generally dated to 1.7 million years ago. But this evidence from Poppy Hills literally pushed back the earliest settlements to about 20 lakh years ago. And this was a kind of a puzzle that archaeologists were facing for a long time. But then additional evidence has to come. And then only you can convince academia as well as the educated commoner that we have these earliest settlements going back to 2 million years or so. But fortunately for us, similar situations came to light from Europe, especially from Georgia in the Caucasus mountain region, where they also identified earliest settlements going back to 1.8 million years. So here again, there was a possibility that the general framework of human expansion, which suggests that the earliest expansion took place with the emergence of Homo erectus in Africa, gave rise to new insights suggesting that we may have human ancestor who may have left Africa earlier than Homo erectus. So even today, we do not have many sites adding strength to the Poppy Hills foundation, because in the same area we do have sites, ancient settlements associated with Homo erectus, and we may not have found fossil remains of our human ancestors, but we have found material remains or cultural products or cultural items in terms of stone tools characterized by hand axes and cleavers, which are not older than about 8 lakh years ago. So there is some kind of a time gap between the sites in the Poppy Hills and in the same region, sites like Dina and Jalalpur, with continued fieldwork and more intensive search for sites which could be dated and so on and so on. Overall, we have settlements which range in time from about 10 lakh years ago onwards for a very, very long time. That was the general picture we had. But as mentioned, in the last 15 years or so, and even a little earlier, two of our sites in southern India, one by name Isampur in northern Karnataka, in the Sorapur, Gulbarga, now Yadgir district, was dated to 1.2 million years ago, and 12 lakh years ago. But that again remained in isolation because we didn't have additional dates, additional sites giving us for the sites represented by hand axes and cleavers and so on. But little later in the first decade of 21st century, the site of Athiram in Tamil Nadu was reinvestigated by Dr. Shanti Prabhu for well over 2 decades now, and a very consistent effort, and finally yielded very wonderful results. The dating efforts were very successful, and she was able to date that particular site called Athiram to 1.5 million years ago. It's all very stimulating for archaeologists who are looking at the earliest settlements and trying to figure out how to establish a particular time frame for the earliest settlements in the subcontinent. So we have these game changers, what we call. Investigations have always been contributing to understanding the time depth and various other aspects of early human settlements and the way in which these communities were adapting to variety of regional geographical environments and so on. So that is the general picture that we have against the background of out of Africa framework. We are looking at sites which are datable in the context, geological context. We apply dating methods which are known as geochronological dating methods. So potassium argon, fission track, and dating methods which have greater time depth, which can help us understand older and older sites, have been identified as grouped as geochronological methods. It helps a lot in figuring out the temporal span and the earliest settlements that we have in the Indian subcontinent. So one thing we have to be clear when we talk about out of Africa expansion. So the earliest settlements in India were the result of into the subcontinent from elsewhere. That's one thing. That is Africa. Subsequently, internal expansion continent. So what were the processes controlling the expansion of these populations within the Indian subcontinent? Once the populations moved into the subcontinent, spread across into the inland regions of the subcontinent. And what was the regional geographical environments that were adaptability and adaptability of these regions by these early simple hunter-gatherer communities. And that is where we have to look at the present distribution of a variety of sites ranging in time from early Paleolithic, middle Paleolithic, and upper Paleolithic. Or it is sometimes also referred to as lower, middle, upper Paleolithic, and so on. There are different terminologies, which actually textbooks give different terminologies in different, written by different authors and so on. So revision of these terminologies as well. But one thing is very clear that we have what we call these early, middle, and upper Paleolithic, which have been identified by distinctive varieties of stone pools, are also placed against the geological time scale, which is known as Pleistocene time period. It is the Pleistocene is again the last two human history or Earth's history. It is a geological time scale. And here, lower Pleistocene, middle Pleistocene, upper Pleistocene subdivisions are there. And lower Pleistocene, the beginning of lower Pleistocene is placed at 2 million years or 2.5 million years. Even there also there is some kind of issue whether to fix it at 2.5 million or at 2 million years ago. So that lower Pleistocene. So for a long time, as I mentioned in the beginning, our earliest Paleolithic settlements were placed around 1 million years ago. But now we know very clearly because of absolute dates like 1.5 million years, 2 million years, and then 2 million-year-old site in northwestern subcontinent. They all help us, fix the earliest settlements in the lower Pleistocene. So Pleistocene was a time period which also witnessed, climatic cycles in terms of glacial and interglacial, climatic changes. These are all long-term changes. For example, the present day climate that we are all enjoying, 1,000 years old. It will continue for several more thousand years, and then there will be onset of another glacial time period. So prior to 12,000 years ago, we went through what is called the last glacier. And the last glacial maximum was between 25 to 18,000 years ago. 18,000 years ago, it gradually, led to warming up, and by about 12,000 years ago, the present day climatic conditions had come into existence. Societies have developed, much more rapidly in comparison with those developments associated with early, middle, and late Paleolithic, time periods. So this is the general background. Next one. I'll be happy to answer any question if you have, because the focus is the research students, as I just told. Feel free to ask me. So this is the basic configuration that we identify in the subcontinent. I'm not talking about India, I'm talking about the subcontinent. The Himalayas in the north, the Balochistan, Suleiman, Kittar mountain ranges in the northwest, the mountain range, which is Arakan or the Burma mountains. They effectively separate the Southern Asian landmass from the Northern Asian landmass. So that is Southern Asia otherwise. But for us, it is Indian subcontinent. It is a natural geographic unit. Indian Ocean in the south, the North Indian Ocean, we have Bengal Arabian Sea, and the Indian Ocean to the south of the equator. These two separate this particular continental landmass from the rest of Asia, and also the Western Asian and Eastern Asia as well. That is why this whole unit comprising seven nations has been called South Asia and so on. So here we have this particular landmark. It has its own internal physiographic subdivisions. So as we come down south of the Himalayas, we have what we call sub-Himalayas. Sub-Himalayas are the Shivalik hill ranges that we have today. Sub-Himalayan ranges are very potential region for understanding evolution of life in the Indian subcontinent, plant life, animal life, or human life, and so on. But the intensity of research in the sub-Himalayas is not as much as we see in other parts of the planet. But south of this sub-Himalayas is the North Indian, the Great Plains, the Indus Ganga, plains, alluvial plains, once which were the hub of human activity from third, fourth, fifth century, fourth, sixth millennium BC onwards. We have the Aravallis from west of northern plains as well as the Indian mountains. Aravallis also separate the Deccan Plateau from the northwestern part of this alluvial plain stretch between the foothills of this mountain range, the Indus Plains, the Thar Desert, and so on. And we have this Deccan Plateau here, which is bounded by western Ghats and then the eastern Ghats, and the northern slopes of the Vindhyas are the northern frontier of the Deccan Plateau. So Deccan Plateau literally extends from this region to this particular point, where the eastern and western Ghats meet at Nilgiris, and the south of the Nilgiris is the Tamil Nadu plains, and west of the western Ghats is the Kerala coast, and then we have further, as we go northwards, we have Canara coast, Goa coast, Konkan coast, Saurashtra coast, and so on and so forth. In the same way, we have the Coromandel coast and the Andhra coast, Orissa coast, and Bengal coast, and so on. So this internal physiography and this particular Tibetan plateau, as is largely governed the monsoon circulation over the subcontinent. This is the most important phenomenon, natural phenomenon that has failed and the rise of civilization in this area. Most of us, as I said, we associate all our civilizations to river valleys. But what the water that flows through these river valleys? So it's not the melt water coming from the Himalayas or anything else, but it is basically the monsoon circulation. We're still experiencing the monsoon circulation. prevailing over the Indian subcontinent. And its distribution is equally important. So the monsoon circulation is controlled by the what we call thermal contrast, heat, amount of heat experienced by different sectors of these particular landmass. The Tibetan Plateau, the North Indian Plains, the Deccan Plateau, and the oceanic area. During summer months, the low pressure areas are built over the land mass because of the high temperature conditions. Most of the air is burnt away. Whereas at the same time, the sea surface temperatures also increase and give rise to moisture in the winds. It's governed by the trade winds which come from equatorial Pacific, travel westwards towards eastern Africa. And they are born southwest, born north east of Africa, and they travel they travel from here to here, and that southwest monsoon sets in. And that monsoon remains very, very active, and the intensity is very, very high for a couple of months from the beginning of the season in the month of June, and gradually rises above the Western Ghats inland area. So Western Ghats are a barrier for the movement of monsoon, carrying high moisture in the early days of its setting into this region. And that is why there is unequal distribution. The coastal areas in the west receive much higher rainfall, and then as we move inland, it keeps on decreasing. It decreases and also decreases latitudinally. As a result, we have distribution of rainfall between southwest monsoon and northeast monsoon. And they don't travel the same path. They have different paths of movement. The northeast does not move the same way as the southwest monsoon moves. So it traverses across different areas. So this monsoon circulation has given rise to regional geographical environments which are characterized by vegetation, variety of vegetation across this. The vegetation cover in all these areas are different. Coastal vegetation is different. The plateau vegetation, we have mangrove forests, we have evergreen forests, we have deciduous forests, we have semi-arid grasslands, and then arid, desert landforms and so on. So these are the factors which are, given rise to the formation of habitats for human colonization. Humans, if they have to live in any given place, they have to have these natural resources available to them. Primary resource is water, fresh water, and of course other natural, for example, in the context of early Paleolithic or middle Paleolithic phase, we have lithic sources. Stones, varieties of stones which are suitable for making variety of stone artifacts. So the environments have played a very important role in the formation of culture areas or regions. Now there may be variation, regional variation, depending upon the various types of resources that were available, suitability for the lifeways of these ancient communities. Hunter-gatherers, agro-pastorals and full-time, and then early urban communities, and then later, time period is urbanization expanding and growing into more and more complex situations. So that is the kind of natural environment that we have. Next one. Okay, let's just try the monsoon network. It's not only Indian monsoon, it is monsoon network across the whole of Asia. The southwest monsoon also reaches parts of western part as well as some parts of central Tibet. That is because the Himalayas are a big barrier, and its winds as they move further northwards, they also lose their own rebound from the Himalayas, and that is how northeast monsoon begins to set in. So this is the way circulation takes place. These arrows indicate monsoon winds move across this land area, and they are responsible for developing geographical areas. If the region is not, it is not suitable for human colonization. That is the most essential requirement. There are additional requirements as they are, natural resources. Primarily for Paleolithic, it is variety of stones that were suitable for making stone tools. What we call, in order to reconstruct how this monsoon circulation has been operating over the subcontinent, at least during the last 300 years, 300,000, 3 lakh, 4 lakh, depending upon evidence that is preserved in geological deposits. Deposits in the lake, deposits in the rivers, and deposits in the seabed and so on. There are a variety of these deposits which yield information through, application of various methods. These scientists, climatologists have developed. They have been able to reconstruct the monsoon intensity, variation in monsoon intensity, in response to glacial, ice age and interglacial type of conditions. Now, how they have altered the habitability of various geographical environments which we have across the Indian subcontinent. So we call those deposits which give us information about the rainfall pattern in the past are called proxy records, proxy climatic records. Items like here representing different time periods, Middle Pleistocene, last glacial maximum I mentioned already, 25 to 18,000 years ago. Then the terminal Pleistocene is about 12,000 years ago. And then we have around 9,000 years ago, we have another dry period, low monsoon, which is known as the Younger Dryas time period. And then you have the mid-Holocene, late Holocene. How this monsoon variation has given rise to changing lifeways of these ancient societies is also an important aspect of our understanding the regional environments. At what particular point of time transitions occurred from hunting gathering to full-time agriculture and so on and so forth can be also reconstructed against these parameters, and then whether change in climate was responsible for bringing about change in the lifeways of people or not, and such things are taken into account. So we have this, for example, in the Middle Pleistocene, we have early Paleolithic. This was our long-term understanding that we do not have early Paleolithic going beyond the Middle Pleistocene. But as I mentioned in the beginning, we now go back to Lower Pleistocene. But at the same time, we also have this similar problem that our geological formations could, were more accurately, and they were not suitable for dating. And that is one reason why we had these restrictions, lack of, a time frame that could help us present the Indian subcontinent's history in terms of global synthesis. We didn't have much space for India in global synthesis of human prehistory. We are now in a position to talk about the importance of the Indian subcontinent in the manner in which the whole of Earth has come to be colonized by human communities. Even today, colonization is going. It is so the beginning from Lower Pleistocene to till now, how these people have been migrating from the area and so on. So here is the time period. Now we have this evidence from India, Lower Pleistocene and Middle Pleistocene. Middle Paleolithic is also very well dated now. So as a result, India occupies an important place in global debates about expansion of human populations from out of Africa, eastwards beyond India into Eastern Asia, Australia, and then the Americas and so on. Next one. So as I mentioned, on our region, I'll not go into the broader subcontinent. As I said in the beginning, most of our surveys associated with Paleolithic research were confined to these river valleys. Large number of the rivers, they have their source in the Western Ghats, and their source in the Western Ghats is because of heavy monsoon, in that region, and gradually all these east flowing rivers came into existence. This network, we have three broad river basins. We have the basin here, and then we have the Tungabhadra further south. Now, it's not only the rivers which have governed the location of settlements. There are other factors which we'll have to look into. As I mentioned, resources, especially suitable lithics available for making stone artifacts. If they were not available, some of these areas were not colonized. The human populations did not spread into those areas where these natural resources are there. Water alone may not control. Yes, without water, no human or plant can survive in any area. That's the. So we have sites reported by ARCHAEOLOGICAL 150 years or more, and they were placed against these river networks. Now, when it comes to understanding the patterns of settlement, we have another area of investigation. We go, like we say, Paleolithic. We also have paleogeology, paleogeography, paleogeomorphology, all kinds of prefix paleo are added to investigations because understanding the landforms associated with the earliest settlements. For a long time, we thought that landscapes have not changed. It's a static landscape which has not undergone major changes because the changes are all associated with dynamic geographical areas in temperate, and high altitude regions. Areas are very, very stable. But then when we began to look at these settlements, in terms of understanding man-land relationships, it became essential that we have to reconstruct paleogeography. Whether the rivers that are flowing today here in this particular network that we see in this map were flowing there even at 10 lakh years ago, 15 lakh years ago or not. That we have to confirm. And if there are changes, and what was the nature of landscape to which these communities had adapted themselves. So that these, even though it's a relatively stable landscape, these landscapes also have undergone changes through time. So the process is what we call denudation, erosion, transportation, and deposition. These are the three of this particular process called denudation process. Any landscape is subject to this denudation. Very hard rock area or very soft rock area, they do undergo or subject to these changes because natural elements also trigger the role of denudation processes. So in that context, what became essential for us is understand how the archaeological site has come into existence. That is what is called site formation processes. Whether the sites that are now existing in a particular form on a particular landscape has remained the same ever since the people had abandoned this village, abandoned that place, or it has undergone some change. Or when you dig through this particular archaeological site, you see some stratigraphy, layers, evidence of human activity, various remains. So understanding the processes behind the way in which the site has come into existence, and after the site has come into existence, what has happened to the site? It's not a protected one. So what changes have occurred? It's a post-depositional changes. After the site came into existence, what happened? So there is a term called taphonomy. See, when the animal dies, it is on the surface for a very, very long time. And then gradually the animal body carcass disintegrates. Vultures, whether other animals, act, and some of these bones remain there. They are discarded by these natural, scavengers, and they get gradually buried, and they get buried for a long time. If it's favorable, the animal bones also decompose into soil. But if the animal bones or the soil environment is favorable, these animal bones will become fossils, or they become petrified, or they retain their original form and become harder, rocky, and we call them the fossils or Paleolithic. And when we go back, we discovered this, and after it is discovered, it is brought to surface. So this particular process is called taphonomy. So what were the processes affecting the barrier, depth, barrier? Similar phenomenon is applicable to archaeological sites. Ever since the site was abandoned and then rediscovered by archaeologists, what happens? So understanding these also becomes very important to understand the settlement system. When we say there is an article between all components of the site, with the nature and as well as the cultural materials that are in the site. That only when they are articulated, there is a system existing. Otherwise, there is no system. So, what has happened to this settlement system ever since the site was abandoned also becomes an important aspect about required. So that is why looking only at the sites, exposed by the rivers was not helping us to understand as completely as one could, as completely as our methods could help us, And so it now became essential that all those sites which were associated with river travels were called secondary sites. Secondary means these sites are not occurring in their original context. They have been transported by the flowing water, and so they are not suitable for detailed reconstruction of the settlement as such in terms of human adaptation, human behavior, and site formation, and so on and so on. So they were all considered as not useful, and then they were worried that we do not have sites comparable to those in Africa and elsewhere. And so on. But then it became essential that all the gravel sites are secondary. So new methods, geological methods, or what we call understanding geomorphology of the landscape, became very, very important to identify the best sites among the known worst sites or secondary sites. So new insights into understanding the sites associated with river gravels also gave us clues to the fact that these sites are also primary. So because the gravel sites were considered secondary, these scholars began to go inland, away from the main rivers, and look inland areas and see if they thought that inland areas are least disturbed by flow, and so we have better high integrity sites in the inland areas, so let us focus attention on so. But even there are problems of understanding the landscapes themselves. Understanding paleogeography was very, very important. Understanding or reconstructing geomorphological processes operating on the sites, either inland or in the riverine context, also became very important. So these methods from geography and geology and sedimentology and reconstruction of paleogeography and the culture area at a given settlement also become very, very important. So sites along the rivers need not be abandoned as sites not worthy of investigation. They can also be considered against an investigation which helps you to figure out whether this is a primary site or is secondary. Okay. So geological formations. Now sites also have a relationship with the geological formation in the area. I was talking about stone tools like hand axe, cleavers, and so on and so on. Okay, these are tool types, but they were made from such type of rocks which were suitable for making them. In the sense, not only for making, to also put them to use. They should have the purpose, functionally, they should be durable. So in that case, your early human ancestors, they had particular cognition, ability to recognize whether this rock is suitable for making a hand axe or cleaver or not. So in that particular way, context, it also became for us to understand the geological formations in that area. And if you can directly relate hand axes to quartzite, a type of rock, hand axes to limestone, a soft limestone or a hard limestone, hand axes to sandstone, hand axes to granite, basalt, these kind of varieties of rocks, which are considered hard rocks. Amongst these rocks I mentioned, limestone is the softest rock. Even your fingernail can put a scratch on that. Whether some rocks were suitable for making these hard, large cutting tools. You know what? These hand axes and cleavers are called large cutting tools. Just giving you an example, will not go into detail. So if you have a cutting tool, the cutting edge should be hard enough, withstand the impact when it is hit against an object which is to be broken, whether it is bone or anything. So here, the hardness of the rock also plays an important. So given to our experience, we identified certain varieties of stones like quartzite, chert, agate, jasper. Granite was rarely used, which is abundant in your area. Basalt is one particular variety of basalt known as was very, very fine-grained, massive kind of a rock, very suitable for making Paleolithic cutting tools. So this was another aspect of it. To identify an archaeological site of the Paleolithic period, try to relate the provenance of, the source of this raw material used for making stone tools. So understanding geology as exposed, you know, in the areas where these formations are, extent, and also understanding the relationship between geological formations and availability of water. So here again, whether most of our rivers are seasonal, as we understand. When we divide our rivers into perennial rivers in northern India and seasonal rivers in southern India. Yeah? Somebody ask? So another point of argument was, if these rivers were seasonal, how these ancient communities could live in a given area, because we have continuity of from lower Paleolithic to upper Paleolithic. The seasonality governed the availability of water. So new dimension to understanding the source of water through a perennial source of water was also becoming more and more essential. Now, as we all know, today we have been exploiting groundwater to such an extent that it is going beyond our reach. But then when it is going beyond our reach, it is human agency which is responsible for its depletion. Given the situation that humans were not interfering with these resources, what would have been the situation? Another important aspect of this was also the demographic pressure, population pressure on these natural resources. Size of population at the time, lower middle. Go backwards in time, population number goes down to very small figure. So how much of population on these water resource? And there were certainly hunter-gatherers who were never exploiting water. Groundwater exploitation is only about 3,000-4,000 years in human history. There. Now, given the situation, the way in which rainfall takes place over the subcontinent, and here another important aspect was variety of soils distributed across the landscape. Different soils come into existence and the different climatic regimes. Particular type of rock which we call black soil. Now all black soils are not product of weathering of a black rock. There are black soils which have come into existence because of certain hydrological conditions. Also give rise to formation of black soils. For example, there are so many keres in our area. You go back to any of these keres when there is low water, look at the bed of this lake, you will only see black soil. You have all greyish soils. So that contrast in color should help you to understand why that black soil is black. And that is a bonded environment. So given the low demographic pressure and normal monsoon, even though there were long-term variations, they would not have altered the surface water resources on land. So that is where we began to guess in terms of availability of fresh water in the form of shallow ponds and pools. We call them water holes. It's not necessarily the through-flowing river which supports human life, but inland regions where water collects in the form of pools and ponds were ideal. Now this is also the situation in Africa where we have the oldest human settlements going back to now 6 million years or so. Associated with some lakes, not rivers exactly. Rivers grow dry and much of the water flowing through the river goes into the sea. Lakes, pools and ponds remains there. And they were the centers of attraction for human communities to inhabit the area. Black soils spread across the landscape. Identify former landscapes which provided perennial sources of water. And that also became an aspect. Now if you go, you will see black soil modified because of agricultural expansion. But in minus this agricultural expansion, if you look at the landscape, this time landscape, there were series of low-lying, low topographic lows, what we call, carrying water throughout years, supporting human and animal life. So these dimensions became very important for us to understand archaeology, how humans were able to adapt to different environments, different geographical areas, not necessarily along the main river courses, but away from the rivers. And this understanding has helped us, I discover more sites which have enabled us to figure out how old are they and what were the factors responsible for their, colonization of the geographical area and so on. So forget about rivers. Understand the resource for any particular community, hunter-gatherer, agro-pastoral, whatever. Very important role. Natural resource played a role. So that's why we say man-land relationships. So regional variation in the distribution of various types of resources which are essential for maintaining a particular way of life also govern the distribution of these settlements across the landscape. So we have moved away from the rivers to inland areas, and looking at the sites in terms of their direct relationship to immediate environment, geographical and geological environment. Next one. So these are some of that is the general geological map of Karnataka. Subdivide these regions into various formations belonging to different geological ages. This is one such geological formation which is known as the Bhima Basin, which spreads over Gulbarga, Bijapur, and eastern part of Andhra Pradesh, former Hyderabad, Nizam's dominion. But we have this particular formation distributed, and these formations are identified by these regions here. This area is important for us. For geologists, it is important because this limestone is a major resource for cement industry and so on. But for us, this same limestone was a major resource for Paleolithic habitation that occurred here in this area. The best examples come from Hunski Valley in Shapur Taluk, and several hundred sites were discovered, well investigated and dated and so on by Dr. Padaya over the period of nearly 3.5 decades. From 1960s to end of the last century, and his seminal contribution has helped us understand, how these communities were able to adapt to inland. Even here, initially, he focused on understanding site formations, but then there were other problems associated because they were again tied up with river systems. But then, when we went back to understand paleogeography, we were very sure that the kind of rivers that flow now that we have did not exist at all. Now the rivers which were flowing 10 years ago in the same region have not been flowing today. But they have left evidence of their former courses. So there are lots of deposits which helped us think in terms of an entirely different landscape when the early Paleolithic communities colonized the Hunski, white well basins in that. Next one. And the major source of raw material was limestone, harder variety of rock. There are varieties of limestones, and amongst them, the best and the hardest limestone is silicified limestone, or what we call a siliceous limestone, was selected for making those large cutting tools in that region. Further south of the previous area, that is what we have is part of Belgaum, Bijapur, and now Bagalkot district of Karnataka, where we have the widespread distribution of quartzite, shales, and limestone, small, areas. But the large-scale distribution of Kaladgi quartzite was identified as a separate geological basin called Kaladgi Basin. The previous basin was known as Bhima Basin, not because the river Bhima flows there, but because the geological formations were to be given a name, and they were standing distinct from these formations. Here, Robert Bruce Foote was mapping this area, identified that northern part as Bhima Basin and this part as Kaladgi Basin. The Kaladgi Basin is cut through by several rivers, the major one and the Krishna. So initially, when Foote was surveying, he also identified large number of sites along the river courses and so on. But later, as I said, the approach was different. We changed our approach to the sites, inland sites. Even here, the entire region, which is about 15,000 square kilometers area, nearly about 400 Paleolithic sites have been mapped. In about 8,000 square kilometer area, Padaya mapped, nearly 400 sites. So the density is important here. Why in such a small defined area we have such a dense occurrence of Paleolithic settlements? Not only dense occurrence, continuity over a long period of time. So subdivisions of Paleolithic represented by sites in either of Kaladgi Basin or in the Bhima Basin. The ideal raw material, they did not have to choose between this variety of quartzite, that variety of quartzite, but this quartzite as such was very, very ideal. Next one. Next one. And that is the quartzite exposure. If you want to break it with a steel hammer, it is harder than steel. That kind of quartzite it is. And it's widespread in this area. See the green and the topography, low undulating landscape. And these were the areas where you would have had water bodies in the former times. And now the water body departed from my discussion on groundwater. So as we go backwards in time, groundwater tables were much higher and surfaces were saturated with this, what called swampy areas, swamps. And these swamps gave rise to black soils. The groundwater springs were active through these springs. These fissures and cracks, they were responsible for fresh water available in the inland areas. If you go today, it's a hard, rocky area. It's a rocky desert. And there are a number of sites. Every stone on the surface, man-made stone pool. But you have to understand why such an dense distribution of archaeological material in a landscape where there is no, hardly any. There is no water. Small rivulet also does not exist there. So that is where the springs were active in the former times. But how to prove that? Proving the existence of springs in the former times was our task. So the sites are indirect evidence because people were there, naturally water was there. People were there because the rock, ideal rock, suitable for the available, so it was the controlling factor. They were the controlling factor. But we have to explain with evidence, and then it has to be conclusive. So vegetation, even today in a semi-arid condition, you have this dense variety of plants growing there in that area. Naturally, when conditions were more congenial, plant food resources were much more diverse than what we can see today. Next one. So this particular the previous slide area, this is that ridge of quartzite ridge, and we have this pass goes through, the railway line goes through here. We have seen this is the Malaprabha River. In the foothill areas, we have large number of sites of various time periods. This is the main river, and we have these small streams flowing. And then north of this is this ridge. Yeah, time over. I have one more hour, I thought. I'll be fast. So this is what we call Lakmo. We have series in this region where we have the Malaprabha flowing. But even there are no rivers, only seasonal streams. Only when the rain falls, there's some water flowing in a gully. And that is the kind of river these people have. But then when we look at the distribution, it is much more denser than here. This entire northern stretch of this range, there are hundreds of these sites going into inland areas of the Kalaki Basin. So then we began to excavate and look at the geological stratigraphy. We found two distinctive formations. Next one. Distinctive formations along this slope. We have what is called Third Brescia. This north slope, Piedmont Band, like these are Australian lower Paleolithic pools here, buried underneath the surface. And this is capped by what we call lateritic formation. Laterite or ferricrete. Ferricrete formation takes place in high, humid environments. And this laterite is further capped by what we call calcrete, carbonate material. And that carbonate material represents a desiccating environment. And then we have this two form. The calcrete is not a pedogenic or soil formation process product, but it is a deposit, calcrete, carbonate deposited by ancient spring activity. That is called two form. Now the interface is 100% close to the fact that even though there is not a single water body in the vicinity of the site, 2 kilometers radius you go, you don't find a water body. And this was explaining the location of this particular site all along the northern slopes, where there is no river course along. So likewise, there are these formations were to be, systematically studied, investigated, lab analysis, helped us understand change in the geological environment and the geomorphic environment as well as climate as well. Come into existence in that region at the time when conditions were more favorable than next. This Vindhya Basin. This also I mentioned already. Next. Okay, we move towards Andhra Pradesh, like Karnataka map, geological map. We also have this map of Andhra Pradesh. We are more interested in this particular presenting area known as Kadapa Basin. Similar to Kalangi and Vindhya, which I showed you previously. Similar rock formations and similar sequence of archaeological sites. Comparable. From lower, middle, upper Paleolithic onwards, you have this area well distributed across the entire region. Although the sites have been tied up with the river network that is presently there as a drainage pattern, but the sites that we have in southwestern part of this region are of more interest to us. Next one. Next one. So the southwestern part of this Kadapa basin, what we see here is a small area called Jwalapuram area, where we found these Paleolithic sites in the middle sites associated with low energy or large water body. Now it is a river, small river cuts through that water body, and this area is caves like Vilasargam cave, and these are all limestone rich areas, and the caves are also formed in the limestone. And between Banganpalle and this place called Jwalapuram, we have about 5 sites ranging in time from lower Paleolithic to early historic time period. Next. So one example, the foothill areas, we have these formations where we have this gravel body which is yielding suitable material in a suitable size grade, and they were utilized for making packs. And this is a disturbed area in terms of reconstruction of. Although there are formations, younger formations, older formations are relationship. But then what was important for us is this particular gravel body, which is a hill slope colluvium, also provided raw material for making stone artifacts from other variety of limestone here. Next. Okay. So we have these sites here. This Katikavani Kunda, then Pathapatu, Jwalapuram, and sites that we have these lower Paleolithic, middle Paleolithic, and then we have the microlithic sites or rock shelter sites. These are all rock shelters with microliths, and then we have later Neolithic sites and early Iron Age sites and so on. So this is the type of large cutting cleaver tool we have found in this particular formation here. That gave us close to the sites along the foothill areas, and so we were able to map and document the foothill regions. This kind of colluvium containing settlements. We moved away from the foothill areas into inland, the low-lying areas, and we had better preserved archaeology. These are the sites which came to light from the region, away from the inland areas. Next one. So the famous Vilasargam cave, which was excavated in 1885, and then in the 1960s and early 70s, these were subject to serious investigations that was the time when Indian archaeologists were interested in establishing whether there are upper Paleolithic sites in India or not. And this was an organized investigation. It was fruitful and so on. We went back again. We were looking at human expansions, various phases of human expansion from out of Africa. So we thought cave areas, so far we have not succeeded in identifying or discovering human remains from archaeological context. So we thought these caves are the best places, like in Europe and elsewhere, where caves have given a good evidence of human fossil remains. So we plan to go back and dig into these caves, given hints about occupation here and so on. So far we have not succeeded, at least not with us yet. Next. Another view of the case, but then we have found a variety of animal remains dating back to about 200,000 and more. And that's contributing to understanding animal kingdom and their habitability or adaptation to these grassland environments in this area. Next one. Discovered by Robert Brucewood, later by other workers. Next one. Now I said this Banganpalle, Vilasargam, Dept, this is the region where we concentrated, and these are the cave interiors, which were also subject to investigation by our team. We also found some material which can be dated, but unfortunately, we have not found a cultural material or biological material in the cave floor deposits. Next. going. There are some of these geometric patterns on the walls of the caves indicating human presence in the area. It's not very ancient, but it's about 5,000-year-old engraving that we see on the cave walls in the limestone cave. Huge cave. The cave floor deposits which we excavated, and we have been able to date this up to about 200,000 years ago. Yeah, next. Another view. Next. This is the site called Dolophuram 3, where we have this particular whitish material known as volcanic ash or Indus dated to about 74,000 years ago. And luckily for us, below this we have middle Paleolithic material. Not large cutting tools, but small flake tools, which are typical of that particular time period when these tools were made from entirely different technology. Has established an absolute chronology for the entire cultural sequence from this area, and they are all primary sites, inland sites, not associated with any of the rivers and so on. Next. So the excavated site, ash here, and below that, up to this level, we have these stone artifacts coming from this particular level, and this has been dated to about 80,000 or 77,000 years ago. This is 74,000 years ago. And so we have an absolute chronology for this site, an inland region. As far inland, away from the Kunderu is the major river, which is about 30 kilometers away from it. Another view of the same excavations which we carried out. This is the stratigraphy that we have reconstructed, and we have these plates. This is the whitish volcanic ash, and then we have this material dated to OSL. Then we have this middle Paleolithic coming here, and further below down we'll have those access rivers dating back to about 400,000 as we guess, because we don't have that, of that particular product. Next. Okay, we also have these rock shelters becoming important centers of human activity around 40,000 years ago. Generally, it was thought all our rock shelter occupations in the range of 8 to 10,000 years. For the first time, we found rock art associated with these what we call rock shelters, and we carried out excavation at the base of this next. At the base of this rock shelter, and then there we were able to figure out the presence of microliths or small professor. Thinking more on that, but then those Mesolithic sites are now as old as 40,000 years ago. And so many of these rock shelters contain this material in terms of rock art on the boulder surfaces, and then at the base we have evidence of human occupation. We have excavated only 2 such rock shelters, but one of these rock shelters was given as 40,000-year-old beginning of microlithic culture or microlithic stone tools in subcontinent. That also adds to our understanding of contributing to the debate that is going on about expansion of modern humans, our immediate ancestors into the subcontinent. Next one. The base excavation. We were able to go back to 3.5 meters here, and the base is dated to about 40,000 meters. The rock art on the rock surfaces here, very distinct from other parts of the Indian subcontinent, like we made in those areas. But then it is now worth focusing our attention on more survey for rock art and see regional variation in the way in which rock art depictions were made by different communities, inhabiting different geographical environments. Next. End of our experience, we, in terms of contributing towards about model settlement distribution model, settlement pattern in what is called Indian subcontinent during the Paleolithic. So the distribution of the dense distribution of sites occurs in these 7 basins, what we call Purana, Kalargi, Nima, India's Kadaka basin, and then there are so many other smaller basins and Gondwana basins, and all our major sites which have been well studied and major areas which have highest density of distribution of Paleolithic sites. They are all associated with these basins. Very basic topography, understanding the natural resources available in these basins, as well as availability of fresh water throughout the year. And these areas coming under the influence of long-term and short-term climatic change. So when we were able to reconstruct put all these components together,
we found that in spite of long-term variation in monsoon regimes, these areas were not affected by shortage of water, fresh water resources. Because the north-southwest monsoon is weak during ice ages, but north-east during ice ages. So this particular inverse relationship between northwest monsoons with the glacial interglacial periods and the way the paths of movement of these circulation of monsoon covering all these basins, irrespective of ice age or interglacial time period. So they were never affected by these long-term changes. To the fact that identifying core areas of human settlements during the Paleolithic times. Only after the end of the Paleolithic, the expansion of these communities outside these basin areas. There were occasional moments of these communities out of these basins at different points of time. We do have evidence. So when we look at these area basins and the other geological formations, there is a relative low density of distribution and then lack of continuity from lower middle to upper Paleolithic on. So here we thought we'll identify these basins as core areas, and those basins, those geological basins where we do not have dense distribution and continuity of human settlements, the Paleolithic, or peripheral areas, and those areas where we do not have any of these lower middle upper Paleolithic sites as isolated areas. So they are all controlled by geological formations and also physiography or what we call topography, the groundwater movement. And that was essentially controlling the habitability of any of these areas. So core, peripheral, and isolated areas. This is the kind of distribution pattern that we have in this place. To see so the Paleolithic in the Ganga plains or the Indus plains. We don't have the continuity in the basaltic area, which is called Deccan volcanic province covering western part of India, central western part of Madhya Pradesh and whole of Gujarat. They all came under this fellow volcanism 70 million years ago and sites, but not as dense as we see them in other areas. This is a relative distribution pattern, and that has to be explained. So we have these environmental factors, guiding us to think in terms of this particular pattern of distribution across the Indian subcontinent. Next one. And I give these areas and so on, I have already mentioned. Thank you for your attention.
Just one or two questions.
Sir, I welcome your very intellectual information. My question is, Muttanti is one place is there in Krishna belt. It is in submerged. It's a very important place. What are the relations between the Kalabhik and Muttanti? Muttanti is very important site.
If I have the map, I can discuss your question. Without map, I can't discuss. Muttanti is a place name. In Krishna basin, not in the Kalabhik basin.
No,
what
sir.
site it is?
Sir, 30 kilometers from.
No, that's fine. I'm not talking of distance. What material has come from this site?
Yes, sir. The Asundara sir is located that side.
What material has come from this?
That I think is the same. The Kalabhik.
I don't want this kind of a thing. Yes. I want what material has come from this site. Lever, plate tool, plate.
Tools and.
No, that is not the answer. What type of tool? Think of
Mesolithics, mixed the Mesolithic tools.
It's not clear. I can't answer the question like that. Unless if you show the map where the site is, if it is in relation to any of these formations, I'll give you the explanation. But I can't just imagine.
Okay, sorry, sir. One more question.
Yeah.
The Kaladigi is very important site during Paleolithic and so. So then the British government, the colonial period, it is one of the very important places. Now it is a small village.
It was a district.
So are there any relations?
It was a district headquarters.
Yes, yes.
It was a British settlement.
Yes,
well.
yes.
Now they moved the district place to somewhere else. So that is the only difference. Millions of years old situation.
I think you mentioned one of the industrial area, industrial place. Kaladigi in the earlier period also. Now it is very important place. Now it is not now in the period of colonial British period.
They had, British India geography was different.
Yes.
Okay, Nizam's time period geography was different. Yes. So at what point of time this was part of Nizam's dominion, Bombay, part of the British area? We don't know. I can't talk about that area. I can only talk where these boundaries, subdivisions did not exist. For me, it is natural matters. Okay.
Okay.
So then, Putty. South Karnataka sites, there are few sites. It comes under peripheral area. Geological formations as continuous as we find them in Kalaki, Basin, and so on. In the Western Ghats, there are some inlayers where we have quartzite material. And wherever this quartzite occurs, we have these Tumkur district, we have Kipanahalli and those sites. But their isolation, very rare. Very rarely people are ranging into these areas. So that is an evidence of periodic ranging of these communities from core areas into peripheral areas. So largely they are all divide of this kind of Paleolithic. So that is why this model is not a 100% explanation, but it's a kind of you can hang on to this model to understand why sites are there.
Last question.
ಇದುವರೆಗೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ. There are claims, but they are not true. They are not true sites. Modern hunter-gatherers, not ancient hunter-gatherers. For modern hunter-gatherers, they have modern equipments, to hunt and gather. Ancient hunter-gatherers, they have to depend on. Yeah, true.
It is easy to hunt fishes and.
They were not fishermen. The fishes came in only last 15,000-20,000 years, not earlier. Fishing was not an occupation, subsistence economy, part of subsistence economy.
Seashells.
Many have used. Not in the Indian region, but there are some coastal sites where Dr. Ajit will talk to you more.
We have a big coastal area.
Yeah. How much distance coastal distance? Big it is. How big it is in terms of kilometers, length?
More than 5,000 kilometers.
Not correct.
I thank Professor Ravi Kureshita sir on behalf of myself and all other students. Now I would like to go to the next speaker. I would like to invite Professor Ajit Prasad sir to the dais. He will be delivering his talk on settlements of Mesolithic India. So before he takes his place on the podium, I would like to make a small introduction of the speaker. Professor Ajit Prasad sir is here as a professor of archaeology and head of Department of Archaeology and Ancient History, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Vadodara. His area of research is prehistoric archaeology, quaternary environmental adaptations, and Harappan archaeology. He has been working on the different sites of Gujarat as well as Harappan sites in Gujarat region, and he has projects in collaboration with Spain. He has been involved in the excavation of Stone Age sites in Gujarat region as well as Harappan sites. He has published more than 45 papers in national as well as international, and he has made presentations more than 70 in national and international level conferences, seminars, and workshops. So it is our honor for us to have him here with us to invite him to kindly make his presentation. Professor Ajit Prasad sir.
Thank you for the introduction, nice introduction in fact. Before I start let me thank the Department of History and Archaeology and all members of the department as well as Professor Murthy inviting me to on Mesolithic systems in India, settlement systems of Mesolithic in India. When they asked me to present on this, I was just actually looking at the Mesolithic map of India and found it is a huge task. And when you talk about settlement system, what is one trying to understand is how different sites in a geographical region, in fact, are functionally interconnected, how they articulate with the environment in terms of resource exploitation. That essentially is the core of settlement system studies, and that can be done in a regional scale. It means that we have several different settlement systems, so one cannot actually make a blanket, broad statement about Mesolithic settlements. So what I would actually try to address is to give you a broad idea about different kinds of Mesolithic sites reported from our subcontinent, and take two examples of where I actually worked in two different environmental settings. One essentially dealing with hilly terrain with a humid to semi-humid environmental setting. The other one is essentially a kind of arid, semi-arid environment. So you have two different contrasting environmental settings, and try to understand how one can understand the formations, Mesolithic sites which we come across in terms of how people lived and exploited the resources, and how that can actually be reconstructed on the basis of the evidence which we have. Artifacts of villages we come across, and also the association of the site with the geomorphic context, the geographic context, and also in terms of the plant and animal food remains which we come across in those sites. We did in some of our sites, and I would like to present that in the larger context of Mesolithic cultural development. Also, what we need to also we need to understand is that when we talk about the Mesolithic, we are actually referring to the term essentially deals with the kind of Holocene culture defined Holocene cultural development, which immediately precedes the food producing way of life. So Mesolithic is essentially seen in which you actually come across that the main artifacts are all made on tiny little plates, what is known as microblade technology, which Professor Devi has actually just mentioned. The microblade technology actually going back as early as 70,000 to 80,000 years in Africa. In our own country, the team has actually understand the beginning of this technology going back to 40,000 to 45,000 years. So that essentially is the beginning of microbial technology. Hunters and gatherers in later actually kind of took the first step that led to the beginning of the producing way of life. That is a new way of looking at Mesolithic. Where the Mesolithic hunters and gatherers with this microblade technology started kind of manipulating and managing the environmental resources by expanding the food base, both plant and animal, which eventually led to some of those plants become domesticated at the beginning of Neolithic way of life. So if you actually look in that context, Mesolithic essentially need to be looking in that context to understand how the systems actually work, how the settlements actually work. So what we actually would see is that in almost all these Mesolithic sites or Mesolithic regions, you do come across people, hunters and gatherers, different efforts to kind of expand the food base. One should actually be looking at the evidence which one can actually kind of collect from both animal and plant. This has been the trend or I suppose, of late in the sense the last 20, 30 years, where the Mesolithic site has been investigated to understand how the hunters and gatherers, kind of trying to expand the food base by incorporating new food items and also intensively certain animals, which led to the beginning of domestication. Next slide, please. So, so what we have is that we have different. It is during this period you also come across the regional variation in tool assemblages, material assemblage is quite easily identifiable. Regional variation did exist even prior to the Mesolithic period in the Paleolithic as well. But in here, we actually come across much easily identifiable regional variations in tool typologies, different sets of artifacts, and also the resources that were exploited as well. And that one of the reasons is that it is in this period you also do come across settlements actually kind of occupying almost all environmental regions, starting from the arid regions in Western India. Then you come to the evergreen high rainfall region, or in the coastal regions of peninsular India. Irrespective of the environmental diversity, you do actually come across Mesolithic. One of the reasons is that the Holocene is an environmental set. Holocene actually set off a much more conducive environment for human survival that resulted in the population increase. So new populations actually started spreading into new economies which were not occupied earlier. The other thing is that, last 10,000 years that we Holocene, there aren't any great what is known as changes in geomorphologically to the place to see it. So most of the sites are easily visible. So you do actually come across sites, innumerable number of sites just different eco-niches in our country. So those little, areas which you see here essentially is the regions where we actually come across the last stages of artifacts. Some places or sites is within, the Middle Ganga region, and then you have the Central Indian region, then you have they're all actually falling in different environmental regimes. And when we come to peninsular India, you have the Tungabhadra basin, which includes Karnataka and Andhra region. And then you also have this coastal adaptation, which you actually come across, especially in the Mesolithic coast, a particular site, known as theory assemblages, which are generally associated with sand dunes, which are found along the coast, which actually shows artifact assemblages entirely different from what has been actually reported in the rest of the country. So they actually have to look at these things, how human beings actually kind of adapted themselves in terms of the environment and the resources that are available to them, and devise strategies to exploit them. Next slide, please. So now, with that brief introduction, I will actually come to Gujarat, where we actually work. This is a map which actually shows the distribution of Mesolithic sites, not only Mesolithic sites, but also the Paleolithic sites as well. Triangles in blue, I suppose, which you see are Mesolithic sites. What you actually see is that the pattern did not actually change, suggesting that the environmental settings as well as the geomorphology did actually play an important role in the evolution and development of culture start. What you also see is that there is a clustering of sites and borders of Gujarat. As you can see, large number of sites. As you move in Saurashtra, the number of sites are less. So is the situation in Kutch. But then you also have a number of sites in Rajasthan, which is very arid today, and then people found ways and means of surviving in this region by exploiting resources, scarce resources that are actually available there. And then you also have sites which are actually found in the. So I will actually be looking at some of the sites in order to understand the settlement system. I will be looking at the sites which we have in Gujarat. I will focus on this is North Gujarat, and this is the central part of Gujarat in the eastern part, what we generally describe as the eastern hilly region, which falls into what is known as a humid environment. Next slide, please. So what you actually see is that there's that's a chart which actually shows the distribution of sites. Altogether, what we have is more than 750 sites, 735 sites, And in that, in the eastern margin, where we have more than 500 sites, there is a heavy concentration of Mesolithic sites in the eastern margin. That is primarily because the resources that are available, easily available in that region, have heavy rainfall, high rainfall, which are more conducive for hunter-gatherer survival. As you move away from the eastern hills, the sites, in fact, are less, primarily because of the environment. Can I have the next slide, please? And this is important, primarily the Holocene environment. It's a chart which actually shows the Holocene environment, which is reconstructed on the basis of sedimentological studies, looking at the lake coasts, and which are Rajasthan lake coasts, which are landlocked lake coasts, which are sediments which actually kind of faithfully record the environment. So what you can actually see is that this is how it is. The early part of the Mesolithic generally seemed to be the early part of the Holocene generally seems to be more wet than today, but it's kind of fluctuating quite periodically, as you can actually see here. This is reflected in almost all the studies, and then it is at the beginning of the Mesolithic is actually now dated to in western part of India, now dated to around 7,000, that is 8 million BC, 7,000 to 7,500. It's almost the very beginning of the whole early part of the Holocene, and the Mesolithic way of life, or the hunting and gathering way of life, actually continued to exist along with the Harappans. Harappans actually came in somewhere around 3,000 BC or to 2,500 BC, and then the Mesolithic hunting and gathering way of Mesolithic artifacts did continue even up to the beginning of the historic period. Even though it has started as early as 7,600 BC, of course. So this is important. It is important to understand that the environment remained, even though it remained kind of stable for the last 10,000, there were what is known as periodic fluctuations that happened, and that actually manifested in different degrees in different regions. Next slide, please. So these are the two areas which we're actually talking about. This is the humid or semi-humid area, and this is the semi-arid region where we have several number of Mesolithic sites. Especially in this region, you actually sites eventually kind of turning into what is known as food-producing settlements, so early agro-pastoral settlements, which you will not actually come across. The evidence of similar kind of change are not actually found in the eastern hilly ranges, where the Mesolithic hunters and gatherers remained as hunters and gatherers for a long period of time, even when that historic period, early historic period, because in some of the early historic period sites, we do actually come across use of microlithic artifacts. So there's seen that microlithic way of hunting life actually continued along with the use of microliths almost up to the early part of the historic period. Next slide, please. So in the of the sites which we kind of investigated in the eastern hilly ranges, especially this Orson River. Orson impacted the tributary of the Narmada, and it actually meets, originates from Madhya Pradesh and then meets the Narmada near Bharuch, that is close to Surat. So what we did was that we actually kind of intensively kind of explored this region of the Middle Orson primarily, and what one can see is that the Orson River Basin actually forms a natural region for the Mesolithic hunters and gatherers, which essentially means that the basin could actually support hunting and gathering way of life in terms of water availability, in terms of resources that are available in the region, and also lithic raw material, which Professor Ravi actually mentioned is extremely important for the survival, for the continuation of any particular way of life, wherein you need to have raw material, lithic raw material, to make those artifacts actually easily available in this basin. So it was actually self-sustaining natural region for hunters and gatherers. That is primarily the reason you come across the several number of these Mesolithic hunting and gathering settlements in this region. So next slide, please. So this is the view of that middle region. What you can actually see quite nicely green. The rainfall is somewhere around 1,100 millimeters almost humid to semi-humid, rainfall, and then it is actually dominated by deciduous vegetation, and the general geomorphology is dominated by valley hills. And you do actually have what you actually see in the background in fact is the rock formation that actually contain the suitable raw material for making the Mesolithic artifacts, stone artifacts. Next slide, please. So these actually show the